Hello everyone, welcome to Election Future. As we approach the final days of September, Trump is reaching new heights, now leading not only in all the swing states, but also in states previously thought to be solid for the Democrats. In this video, we'll explore the 2024 electoral map based on the most recent polls from all 50 states. Let's start with the West Coast. In Washington, Kamala Harris is ahead by 21 points, making it a solid blue state. Moving down to Oregon, however, the race is tighter. Harris leads by just 5 points, a significant drop from the 16-point margin Biden had 4 years ago. Oregon is no longer likely blue. Instead, it's leaning toward Kamala Harris this time around. In California, her home state and one of the most liberal in the nation, Harris maintains a commanding lead. Having served as both the state's attorney general and a senator before becoming vice president, she's ahead by a wide margin of 24.5 points in the latest poll against Trump. California will stand as the second solid blue state on the West Coast. Now, let's turn to Nevada, our first competitive state with its 6 electoral votes. Nevada may not be crucial on its own, but if Trump can flip the silver state, something Republicans haven't managed since 2004, he'll be well positioned to take other key battlegrounds. Currently, Nevada is tilting Democrat, with Harris leading by just 1% according to the latest poll from AM Greatness. Nevada, a state Biden narrowly won in 2020 and Clinton in 2016, is gradually shifting rightward, especially after the election of Republican Joe Lombardo as governor in 2022. For now, Nevada is tilting blue on the map, but the gap is slim, and Trump has a real shot at flipping it. Meanwhile, in Arizona, another highly competitive swing state that Biden narrowly won 4 years ago, Trump is ahead by 6%, according to the latest USA Today poll. He's also leading by 3 points in a recent Fox News poll. Given how close the race was in 2020, when Biden won by just 0.31%, it won't take much for Trump to reclaim Arizona. On our map, Arizona is leaning red, marking the first state to go to Trump. Heading eastward to Colorado, we observe a state that has leaned more Democratic in recent elections. A recent poll from Keating Research, a Democratic polling group, shows Kamala Harris ahead by 11 points. Positioning Colorado comfortably in the likely Democratic column. Once considered a swing state, Colorado has trended reliably blue in recent years, driven by expanding urban centers like Denver and Boulder and shifting demographics. In 2020, Joe Biden carried the state by 13.5%, solidifying its likely Democratic status for this election cycle. In New Mexico, Harris holds an 8-point lead, according to the latest Survey USA poll, a fairly reputable source. While Biden won New Mexico by 11 points, Harris's lead is still notable. However, the state is gradually tilting more Republican as Hispanic voters increasingly favor the GOP. As the only state with a Hispanic majority electorate, New Mexico remains likely blue for now, but it's expected to grow more competitive in future elections. Before we move to Texas, it's important to note that many states in the central U.S. are expected to heavily favor Trump. States like Utah, Wyoming, and Idaho have seen him win by margins of 20, 30, or even 40 points in the past 2 elections. In Montana, Trump leads by 23%, according to a Rasmussen Reports poll. Additionally, there's a Senate race where Republican Tim Sheehy will likely benefit from Trump's influence against incumbent Democrat Jon Tester. Montana remains solidly red. Turning to the Dakotas and Nebraska, both North and South Dakota, along with most of Nebraska, are firmly in Trump's camp. However, Nebraska's 2nd district shows Harris leading by 11% in recent polling. While the margin will likely shrink and Trump could still take it, for now, the district is placed in the likely Democratic category. As for Kansas and Oklahoma, both remain solid Trump territory. Before we continue, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any updates as we approach the 2024 election. Let us know in the comments which state you're from and which candidate you're backing for president. Drop a red heart if you're supporting the Republican candidate, or a blue heart if you're going with the Democrat. We're looking forward to seeing where everyone stands. Covering the western half of the continental U.S., we arrive at Trump's biggest target, Texas. This state hasn't swung blue since 1976, when Jimmy Carter won his first term. Based on current polls, Trump is up by 5%. In 2016, he secured a 9-point lead, and in 2020, he won by 6. While his margin 4 years ago wasn't impressive, this time he's likely to claim a double-digit victory. Texas is a lean red state. Although Democrats are optimistic about flipping it, the sheer size of Texas means it could take decades for them to shift the millions of voters needed to gain control. Next, we look at Alaska and Hawaii. Alaska is solid red, while Hawaii remains firmly in the vice president's corner. Now let's head to the Midwest, a critical region for both candidates. Trump needs to win Iowa and Ohio, and given his success in both 2016 and 2020, it's highly unlikely he'll lose either. On the other hand, Harris has to secure her running mate Tim Walz's home state of Minnesota, along with all the blue wall states, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Winning those won't be easy, considering Trump took all three just 8 years ago. Starting with Minnesota, Harris currently leads by 6 points according to a Survey USA poll. This is concerning for her campaign, as she was up by double that margin in July's poll. If she can't outperform Biden in a state where her running mate is the incumbent governor, her path to victory becomes much more difficult. Should Biden outperform Harris in Minnesota, it'll be even tougher for her to win in more competitive states like Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Minnesota hasn't voted Republican since 1972, a distinction no other state holds. Even in 1984, when Reagan swept every other state, Minnesota stayed blue. For it to now be considered lean blue is a worrying sign for the Harris campaign. Meanwhile, Trump is expected to easily win Iowa. In 2016, he led by 9 points, and in 2020, by 8. Iowa is shaping up to be a likely red state once again. Over in Illinois, our first ever poll between Harris and Trump shows her leading by 16 points, just above the 15-point mark, placing Illinois as solid blue. Indiana lacks recent polling, but based on past trends, Trump is almost certain to win by at least 15 points, as he did in the last 2 elections. In Ohio, a recent The Hill and Emerson poll shows Trump with a 10% lead. Although it's not his largest margin, his influence in the state is undeniable. In 2012, both Iowa and Ohio were blue states, but just 4 years later, Trump won them both by nearly double digits. His impact is clear, and both Republican governors in Iowa and Ohio were re-elected by solid 20-point margins in 2022. So, Ohio will likely vote much like Iowa again, placing it firmly in the likely red column. We're now left in the Midwest with just Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. For Harris to have any shot at reaching 270 electoral votes, she absolutely has to win all 3 of these states. There's really no viable path for her without them. Starting with Wisconsin, Kamala Harris holds a 0.9% lead in the polling average, but that's largely driven by a highly skewed Bloomberg poll showing her up by 8 points. Meanwhile, Trump is ahead by 1% in the latest poll. So, on our map, Wisconsin is going to be marked as tilting Republican. If you consider how unreliable Wisconsin polls have been in the past, Biden was projected to win by 6.7% in 2020, but only took it by 0.7%. You can't trust any poll showing Harris with a lead bigger than 1%. Trump's slight edge makes more sense, especially since he performed better in the state in 2016 than Biden did in 2020 when he barely flipped it back. So, Wisconsin leans toward being tilt Republican, and right there, Harris is already in a tough spot, given that she needs to sweep all 3 states. Moving over to Michigan, it's neck and neck between Trump and Harris, according to Rasmussen reports. However, looking closely at the numbers, Trump is sitting at 48.4%, while Kamala Harris is at 46%. So, technically, Trump holds a narrow lead, making Michigan tilt Republican on the map, though the rounding might show a tie. Trump's slight advantage tips the state his way, making Michigan the 4th state to tilt toward Trump so far. Now on to Pennsylvania, where Trump and Harris are also locked in a tight race. According to Rasmussen, once again, Harris is only leading because of a skewed Bloomberg poll, which consistently overstates her margins. If Pennsylvania goes to Trump, there's no realistic path left for Harris. Even if she wins Nevada and Arizona, she won't be able to make up the 19 electoral votes Pennsylvania holds. It's the 5th largest state in terms of electoral votes, making it the most crucial state on the map right now. Pennsylvania is tilting red, favoring Trump on our map. Now let's shift our focus to the Northeast, where many of the upcoming races are expected to be safe for Harris. Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, along with Maryland and the District of Columbia, are all solidly in her corner. Meanwhile, New Jersey and Delaware are likely to go Harris's way. These states, while more competitive, still lean in her favor. In New Jersey, however, the situation is complicated by the Bob Menendez scandal, where the sitting senator has faced multiple corruption charges. As for New York, we do have some polling, and it shows Harris ahead by just 14 points. To put that in perspective, Biden won the state by 23 points 4 years ago. If Harris's margin falls below 15%, it would mark the first time since Michael Dukakis in 1988 that a Democrat hasn't secured the Empire State by a solid margin. Right now, we're marking New York as likely blue. New Hampshire is another likely blue state, which Biden carried by 15 points or more in the last election. A new poll shows Harris up by 11 points, which is decent. However, it's worth noting that the University of New Hampshire tends to lean left, and that bias becomes clearer when we examine the polls for Maine. While a 5-point lead is acceptable, it's less than Biden's 7-point margin in 2020, though still an improvement from 2016, when Clinton nearly lost the state, winning by just 1/3 of a percentage point. If Trump can narrow the gap to within 3 points in New Hampshire, it could spell trouble for Harris. For now, though, New Hampshire remains lean blue. Finally, let's wrap up with Maine. The at-large vote, worth 2 electoral votes, currently shows Harris up by 17 points. Keep in mind, this is another poll from the University of New Hampshire, which tends to skew left. Interestingly, a more recent poll from Pan Atlantic shows Harris leading by only 8 points, a sharp contrast. This discrepancy highlights the university's left-leaning bias. Just 8 years ago, Clinton won Maine by a slim 3%, and even in 2020, when Biden was a strong candidate, he only carried the state by 9.1%. We also have data from the 1st and 2nd districts based on the same sample. Harris is ahead by 26 points in the 1st district, while Trump leads by 7 in the 2nd. Trump has historically done well in Maine's 2nd district, winning it in both 2016 and 2020. For now, we're calling Maine's 1st district solid blue, while the 2nd district leans red. However, this may not reflect the final map, but for now, we'll give the whole state of Maine to Kamala Harris. Wrapping up the map with the southeastern quadrant, this election is shaping up to be a tight race. Trump stands at 178 electoral votes with Harris at 214, but Trump is poised for a significant boost from the southern states. Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri, Mississippi, and Alabama are all solidly red. We've also got our first poll out of Tennessee showing Trump leading by a commanding 26 points. Kentucky is in, and in West Virginia, Trump holds a 27-point advantage based on our first poll there, locking in another solid red state. South Carolina is also safe Trump territory. Now, there are 4 key states left that will be more competitive. Virginia is a state that shouldn't be this close. Joe Biden won it by double digits 4 years ago, but today it's become one of the most competitive battlegrounds. According to the latest Rasmussen poll, Trump is trailing by only 3 points. If Harris only wins Virginia by that slim margin, it spells trouble for her. If Republicans come even close to flipping Virginia, they could secure the election with a comfortable electoral margin. Had Biden stayed in the race, Virginia might have gone red. While Harris may have saved Democrats from a crushing loss, she's not coasting to victory. Virginia will lean blue, but just barely, and she should be seriously concerned about her standing in the state. We've also seen another poll on 538 showing Harris with the same narrow 3-point lead, well within the margin of error, confirming that Virginia will remain lean blue. It's a state trending to the right, especially after electing a Republican governor 3 years ago. Then we have North Carolina, a state Trump has never lost. He won it by nearly 4 points in 2016 and by 1% in 2020, despite polling averages showing Biden ahead for most of the campaign. No one expected Trump to hold North Carolina while losing Georgia, which made the 2020 map such a surprise. Looking at the latest numbers from the Tar Heel state, Trump is up by 3% in the Rasmussen poll. For now, North Carolina is tilting Republican, but Harris faces an uphill battle trying to win a state Biden couldn't, and one Democrats have only carried once since 1976. Let's move down to neighboring Georgia, where its 16 electoral votes look solid for Trump. He's ahead by 1.5% in the polling average, and according to the latest CBS News poll, Trump is up by 2 points. So, I'm giving Georgia to Trump for now, as despite a tie in the latest poll, Trump's lead in the overall polling average makes him the favorite. If Trump takes the Peach State, he's on track to clinch the election. His path is straightforward. Flip Georgia and Arizona back, then win just one of the 3 key states in the upper Midwest. With his current momentum in Pennsylvania, it seems like a manageable task. Just like Arizona, Georgia is a state where Trump doesn't need to do much to reclaim victory. The margin last time was razor thin. Georgia was actually the closest state in the entire country. Joe Biden, running under very favorable conditions for Democrats, became the first Democratic candidate to win Georgia since 1992. But now, we're looking at a more balanced electoral map. There's no COVID crisis, and the economy isn't struggling with a global pandemic, both challenges Trump faced in 2020. With those factors off the table, Trump is automatically in a stronger position, likely enough to reclaim states he lost by less than 1%. Therefore, Georgia is also going to be tilting Republican on our map. Next, we head to the Sunshine State, Florida. It's the third largest state by population and used to be one of the most hotly contested. Just 12 years ago, Florida was the only tilt state on the map, and it remained a tilt state in 2016. But in 2020, we saw a notable shift to the right. While Trump underperformed in most states, he actually improved in Florida, winning by a 3-point margin. Even though polls throughout the entire cycle predicted a Biden win, Trump emerged victorious. Now, both Senate seats in Florida are held by Republicans, and Governor Ron DeSantis secured re-election in 2022. Florida is solidly a red state now, and the latest poll shows Trump with a 5-point lead at the presidential level. It'll be slightly more competitive than DeSantis' 2022 race, where he won by 20 points. But there's little doubt that Trump will carry Florida. That's why we've seen so little polling from the state, and it's no longer considered a battleground. So Florida is leaning red, but Trump could win by 7 to 10 points according to the latest polling. From each state, Trump leads with 306 electoral votes, while Harris stands at 232 as we head into September. With 2 months to go, Kamala Harris could be on track for the worst Democratic performance since 1988. The elections in November will apparently be very exciting. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and like the video and turn on the notification bell. See you in the next video.